resolution is adopted without objection.
President Trump is the first president to be impeached twice.
10 Republicans voted with Democrats.
They're not rejecting a president. He's leaving office in a couple of days. They're rejecting the voters who supported him.
Has anyone been brought here to answer whether they did that because of our president?
Congressman Brian Mast, who lost his legs, by the way, fighting for democracy abroad. Although I don't know about his commitment to it here. He said, did anybody say that?
Yes, the president denouncing violence and calling on his supporters to respect the law.
No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence.
Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey defending his company's ban on President Trump while making a shocking admission. Quote, having to take these actions sets a precedent I feel is dangerous.
All they did was show it more as a power grab, and that offended a lot of people. I think it's going to backfire.
All right, here we go. We begin with the Fox News alert. I don't know if you've heard, but the House voted to impeach President Trump for a second time.
This is the first time in American history that any U.S. president has been impeached more than once.
Right, till the very end, right? Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with more on this historic vote. Griff?
Historic indeed. Good morning, Ainsley, Brian, and Steve. The 232 to 197 vote. Lawmakers choosing to impeach President Trump for inciting an insurrection 1 week after the Capitol riots. And Democrats added they believe the president remains a danger. Watch.
He poses a continuing threat to our nation, to the integrity of our elections, and to our democratic order.
We are debating this historic measure at an actual crime scene, and we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the President of the United States.
He is capable of starting a civil war. He must be impeached. He must be stopped now.
He must go. He is a clear and present danger to the nation that we all love.
It was historic not just for twice impeaching a president, but also it was the most bipartisan vote in history. You see here 10 Republicans that crossed the aisle, creating division in the GOP.
My vote to impeach our sitting president is not a fear-based decision. I am not choosing a side. I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
This doesn't unite the country. There's no way this helps the nation deal with the tragic and terrible events of last week that we all condemn.
President Trump addressed the nation, denouncing violence and calling for calm, but not addressing his own impeachment.
Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. I am calling on all Americans to overcome the passions of the moment and join together as one American people. Let us choose to move forward united for the good of our families, our communities, and our country.
So what now? Impeachment will head to the Senate for a trial, but it won't happen immediately. Majority Leader McConnell rejecting an emergency session push, saying it will have to wait until after the inauguration. And it's unclear exactly where McConnell stands. Writing in a note to colleagues yesterday, he says, quote, I have not made a final decision on how I will vote, and I intend to listen to the legal arguments when they are presented to the Senate. So the big question really is how and when this actually happens. President-elect Biden says he hopes the Senate will do their constitutional duty while also addressing urgent business. Now, that business would include confirming nominees and helping him seat a government in his cabinet members. So we just don't know what happens next, but certainly a day that was historic indeed. Brian, Ainsley, Steve?
No kidding, Griff. All right, thank you very much. After the vote, apparently privately in the Oval Office, the President of the United States had a private ceremony where he awarded Toby Keith the National Medal of Arts. But we have not seen any of those images. The only thing we've seen from the president is that video that he cut where he denounced the violence. Apparently, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, his daughter, Ivanka, his video guy, Dan Scavino, and Vice President Pence all convinced him to film that video. They told him it could actually boost support with some Republicans, and they asked him not to mention impeachment, and he did not. Ultimately, as we just heard from Griff, the message was very clear. Violence is never good, and his true followers would never be violent. The big question, Ainsley, is had he cut that video a week earlier, would we be looking at him being impeached a second time? I don't know.
Well, even when he's out, they want him out. 7 more days, you know. And Kevin McCarthy had a warning. He said impeachment will further divide the country during an already difficult time. Ben Domenech, who is the publicist for The Federalist and is on our show a lot, he said this is not about rejecting President Trump. It's about rejecting all of his voters. Listen to this.
It's a 197-10 split, and it's really putting the finger in the eye of all of these Republican voters who came out and backed the president. You're telling them effectively, CNN's right about you. Jake Tapper is right about you. All these people who said that you were, racist idiots and the like, they were right about you. When you're going along with this joke of an impeachment with no process, no research, no evidence, it's one of these things where I just think you are insulting the very voters you need in order to build a coalition that can move forward. Any politician looking at this has to understand they're not rejecting a president. He's leaving office in a couple of days. They're rejecting the voters who supported him.
He's the publisher, not the publicist. He's the co-founder of...
when he comes on the program, he's kind of a publicist.
Right,
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Yeah, he's the co-founder of The Federalist. But next week, the Senate, because Mitch McConnell has rejected that emergency session, the Senate will meet on the 19th, the day before inauguration.
If Nancy Pelosi hands the articles over to him.
That's true. She hasn't done that yet.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the House are saying, push them over there, make the Senate meet very quickly. But they're going to meet on the 19th, and that's just a pro forum session. So they can't do any business. So they won't be able to take this up until after the inauguration, an hour after President Trump is already out, Brian.
Yeah, I thought Steve Scalise is going to be on a little bit later, stand strongly, as does Jim Jordan behind the president. For the president of the United States, he evidently is a little upset that more people have not stepped forward. He's very angry at Kevin McCarthy for saying the president was wrong in this and had a role in this, but should not be impeached. If you want to censure him, censure him. You saw him run down and say that, kind of extraordinary. Kevin McCarthy was one of his first high-profile allies, but he was just saying things as he saw them. I just think that if Joe Biden really wants people to believe that he wants America together and America united, which is the theme which he's been talking about for the most part when he's not calling Republicans Nazis. But when he is out there talking, he talks about bringing us together. That's going to be his inaugural address. Here's an opportunity. I called Nancy Pelosi this morning, and I said, we'd like to end this here. I made it clear to Mitch McConnell and Senator Schumer, I understand your point. I understand your outrage, but it's really important to get my cabinet nominees put in place and confirmed. And I think it's really important for me to get together on another stimulus package and find a way to open up the country, because now those Democratic governors and mayors that were determined not to open up the country because it was too dangerous because of the virus now realize I have a Democratic president. Now I can open the country. Brian Mast gets it. He's a veteran, as you know, from Florida, won 2 terms already. Here's his message. And listen to the silence after he gives it on the House floor.
On January 6th, thousands broke the law by taking siege of our Capitol here with us inside. Has any one of those individuals who brought violence on this Capitol been brought here to answer whether they did that because of our president? It appears I will receive no answer. I will yield my time back to the gentleman from Ohio.
And if you think about how this thing came together, there is so much we do not know. We do not know about this coordination. We do not understand how they knew where to go from Jim Clyburn's office, which is not even labeled downtown, how they got the radios, what their actual goal was. And if you look at every Trump event, I've been to about 20 before he was president, while he was trying to be president again, there was just no violence. The only violence was when someone came from the outside and would be anti-Trump, and then you can debate that. But they stopped doing that once he became president. You didn't see that anymore. You just didn't think that there would be violence with a Trump group. And there was. And I still think there's so much to be done. The fact that they do a rocket pocket impeachment in a matter of one day with, 3 minutes of debate from each side is outrageous. And I totally agree with Victor Davis Hanson when says it cheapens the whole process. He even worries about Republicans, as I do, as I mentioned yesterday, getting power in the House and being upset about, I don't know, the existence of sanctuary cities or something that Joe Biden does, that it's borderline, but they have the majority, so they'll rocket it through. It cheapens the entire thing.
For Brian Mast to take 30 seconds out of his allotted time and devote it to making a point with that dead air. He felt so strongly about it. He could have talked for 30 seconds, but instead he wanted to make the point and he wanted to draw attention to his comments. Well, he did draw attention. There's a guy over on another channel who had this observation about Brian Mast. Listen to it and see if you agree.
We have video, and I was just watching it as they were starting this vote, of the people who were storming the Capitol saying, the president told us to come here.
Right.
That is happening. I mean, that is video. There's video of this. It is just Exhibit A of the reams of evidence that we have. There's one other thing I want to share.
But just one other thing, that's relevant. What you're saying right now is relevant because Congressman Brian Mast, a Republican from Florida, who lost his legs, by the way, fighting for democracy abroad, although I don't know about his commitment to it here in the United States. He said, did anybody say that?
I don't know about his commitment to it here. Brian Mast didn't like that, and a lot of you didn't like that. Perhaps some of you liked it, but Brian Mast tweeted this out. Attention, Jake Tapper. I lost 2 legs for Jake Tapper's right to say whatever the hell he wants, but that free speech also protects the Republicans he is so eager to condemn for asking constitutional questions about the election. And then Jake Tapper clapped back.
Double down.
You're a hero for your service, and I'm grateful, as I've said before. And yes, I question the commitment to democracy of anyone who spreads election lies, signed on to that deranged Texas Attorney General lawsuit, and voted to commit sedition. You were not just asking questions. We will be asking questions of Congressman Brian Mast from Florida, retired Army Ranger. He's going to be coming up later on in the program.
Listen, they've hated this president since day one. Right after the inauguration in 2017, it took 20 minutes for them to start talking about impeachment. It was all over the headlines. They've been talking about it the entire time, and they got their wish twice. He's impeached.
They won.
They won. 7 days until he's out. You know, even if you don't like him, he lost the election. You know, he's out. Isn't that enough? They have to go through all of this, and Republicans are complaining about the money this is costing us, the time that's wasted. Right. If the Senate does take it up, it's going to be weeks before they can even talk about confirmation.
And you know what, Ainsley, I said a moment ago, they won. The Democrats did win. Ultimately, though, impeachment is about removing somebody from an office. He's going to be gone before they would be able to have any sort of a Senate trial where, they go, we would just like to guarantee he can never run for office again. Just being convicted in the Senate does not guarantee that. There has to be a subsequent vote after that. Of course, it's just simple majority. And given the fact that they've got a majority, the Democrats, well, that seems to be a done deal. But nonetheless, when you look at it, they did win. So what's the point? He's going to be a private citizen. He will be, Brian, removed. So why
Can I just finish my statement? Brian Mast, we love you. We appreciate what you did for this country. You lost both of your legs. You stepped on an IED in Afghanistan, and you are a true hero for that. And you fought for the right to stand on that floor and be able to say whatever you want for freedom of speech.
He's a good lawmaker, knows his stuff, extremely prideful, works extremely high. He's going to be a major power player, and that's why he's stepping forward, not stepping back after doing that. And about the Texas lawsuit, their contention was that Texas did it right, Florida did it right, Ohio did it right, California did it right, and these other states changed their constitution at the last minute and did it wrong, and therefore stifled that state's right to have a say in the election. The lawsuit failed. You're allowed to go through the legal process. Nobody, I thought, was contending about that, but the president decided to do that. And I'll tell you, in the long run, there's stories today about in the Washington Post and New York Times that the president is just enraged about Rudy Giuliani demanding $20,000 a day and giving him some terrible legal advice and mounting some awful illegal offenses. Meanwhile, let's talk about the other story that is going to ripple after President Trump is a private citizen, and that is the crackdown of big tech. We're wondering what Twitter's doing, besides losing a lot of their value. They've lost billions of dollars since they decided to ban the president, their number one customer, who's done more for their company, even though they don't like him, than possibly anybody else. So Jack Dorsey.
What a business model, right?
Right.
My number one customer, you're out.
Right.
And we only want to appeal to half the country.
Right.
Right. So they've lost. Facebook has done the same ban. Facebook has lost even more valuation. Maybe they feel they can get it back. Maybe that's the reason why their CEO and founder, Jack Dorsey, tweeted this out to further explain why he took the action he did to shut down the President of the United States. And here it is. Just roll it back so I can get the very beginning. Having to take these actions fragment the public conversation. They divide us. They limit the potential for clarification, redemption, and learning, and sets a precedent I feel is dangerous. The power an individual or corporation over a part of the global public conversation. And check and accountability on his power has always been the fact that a service like Twitter is one of the small parts of the larger public conversation happening across the internet. If folks do not agree with our rules and enforcement, they can simply go to another internet service. The problem is your number one opponent, you had your other behemoth companies collaborate with, unproven yet, to destroy Parler, whose CEO says yesterday, number one in the App Store, who you mocked with an emoji when they got shelved, said, I don't know if we can come back. He went on. We are trying to do our part by funding an initiative around an open, decentralized standard for social media. Our goal is to be a client of the standard for that public conversation layer of the internet. We call it Blue Sky. Blue Sky is a big X mark on the president. I think this is an extremely scary situation, and they are losing customers on a second-by-second basis.
You know what, Brian? I know a lot of people who don't do Twitter and don't do social media, and they are just puzzled by all of this. However, it's very clear that Twitter wanted to make sure that Donald Trump was not reelected. We heard in the fallout as Silicon Valley was doing postmortems back in 2016, they were furious that he had won and that Hillary Rodham Clinton had lost, and they want to make sure that never happened. And did they change things? Did they alter the algorithms? A lot of people on the political right
shadow banning.
Look, there are all sorts of shadow banning is one of a dozen different things they have done to different conservatives allege. Nikki Haley, the former ambassador to the United Nations, had this observation about what ultimately Twitter is doing by banning Trump.
Hear these companies talk about how, their whole model is about free speech, yet you just shut down, the president of the most free country in the world. And yet you left Iran and you left China up there. And I just think it was a gut reaction. I think it was an emotional reaction. All it did is raise the tensions and the passions of all of the Trump supporters higher and make things more dangerous. If they had taken their time and calmly introduced what they were thinking to the rest of the country, it would have been a different story. But all they did was show it more as a power grab, and that offended a lot of people. I think it's going to backfire.
Well, let's see what happens going forward. Parler was born a couple of years ago as an answer to Twitter. Will somebody be able to build the infrastructure from top to bottom so you do not rely on these third-party vendors who might pull the plug? They could do that and have a complete unit, but then you are beholden to Apple and to Google, which both operate the app stores. And if you do not have that app store gizmo right there, the emoji where you push it and you add it to your phone, how would you be able to do it? Because effectively, that is how big tech, these monster monopolies, are able to be the gatekeepers to you.
Or you go to Google, and Google is also in on it, too. These competitors collude together in order to stop just about anyone. And if they could stop the president entirely, if the president wants to use the POTUS account, they stop his Twitter. If he goes to use Dan Scavino's, if it's from the president, they freeze it. That is flat out evil.
Shutting down the conservative voices, and it is dangerous. Jack Dorsey says it's dangerous, admits to that, but yet he's still going to do it. All right, back to our top story. The president impeached for an historic second time, but how costly will this prove for the Constitution? Jonathan Turley is up next.
24 minutes after the hour, back with the Fox News Alert. Lawmakers voting to impeach President Trump for the second time, but what standard could this set for future presidents, with the Senate trial set for taking on the president once he is out of office? Here to react, Fox News contributor, George Washington Law Professor Jonathan Turley. Professor Turley, you said this shouldn't go forward for various reasons. You've been on every day, every channel saying this is a problem. Now that it's done, what do you think?
Well, they just created a pathway for what I call the snap impeachment. They basically circumvented the usual process of impeachment. They did not hold a hearing where the implications of the article of impeachment could be considered. They did not give a formal opportunity for the president to respond in a hearing. And they didn't give any real opportunity to amend the language. They went straight to the floor and demanded a vote. And they did get 10 Republicans to vote with them, but it was largely a partisan vote. So this could certainly be used again in the future, and I think that's very unfortunate. I've always said that I don't fault people for viewing the president's conduct as impeachable. I don't like the language of this article of impeachment. I think that it is sweeping, and it could have serious repercussions in the future as people weaponize this process against other presidents.
Mitch McConnell is going to be majority leader for another week, and he says, I'm not coming back early to take a look at this, and I'm not even telling you how I'm going to vote. I haven't decided yet. Who knows if he actually has. So what would be the next step with majority leader Chuck Schumer?
Well, it's going to get rather odd going forward, because they will be holding a trial to remove a president who's already left. Now, the Constitution refers to this as a process of removal. You can disqualify someone from future office, but that is a supplemental punishment that can be added in a separate vote. So there's going to be a threshold issue that Chief Justice John Roberts will have to decide. I have a column in USA Today on this coming out today, which is this really an impeachment trial? When you don't, with the current president, is a different guy. And so Roberts may be asked to make that decision as a threshold question, and whether the Senate simply doesn't have continuing jurisdiction once someone is a private citizen.
Gotcha.
This has happened once before with a Secretary of War in 1876, but he was acquitted.
I also heard there was a senator that was impeached twice. The second time he was out of office, and they said, he's already out of office. We're not going to go forward. Senator Blunt, I think. Real quick. Right. So two things. They want to stop him from running again. And if they want to do that, they have to impeach him. And then they have to have a separate resolution to stop him from running again. And that would just need a simple majority, correct?
Yeah, but I don't know if they have a vote even to get through conviction on this. You know, in the Belknap case, almost 50% of those senators voted on an initial motion that they didn't think that this was a legitimate impeachment trial. And ultimately, they went on to acquit him. So this could be a repeat of that history.
Unbelievable. And we'll see where we go from here. By the way, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have an economic crisis flourishing. We have a vaccine that's not getting to the people fast enough. And we have a president coming in that wants to unite the country. I'm not sure that lines up with an impeachment trial for someone that's out of office in terms of my things to do list. But Jonathan, it's good news for you. We're going to need you more and more, so get plenty of rest.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll pick up USA Today, although I usually get it outside my hotel room, but I don't stay in hotels anymore. Thank you. All right, coming up straight ahead, some of the media claiming a double standard on violence, condemning the Capitol riot, while justifying an entire summer of unrest.
You can't compare what happened this summer to what happened at the Capitol. It's two different things.
Right.
Inauguration, then in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. They're expected to be in place by this weekend as federal law enforcement tracks multiple threats for a, quote, week of siege. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser facing threats herself and asking the feds to cancel demonstration permits ahead of next week's inauguration. President Trump calling for peace.
No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. Whether you are on the right or on the left, a Democrat or a Republican, there is never a justification for violence. No excuses, no exceptions.
Airbnb saying it has blocked and canceled all reservations in the D.C. area for Inauguration Week as the FAA has seen an uptick in unruly passengers since the Capitol riots. Back to you.
Well, they're just trying to keep us safe. All right. Thank you very much, Todd. Let's bring in Florida Republican Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Okay, so it's the morning after. The president has been impeached a second time. This is historic. And I'm looking at the Republican Party. And because 10 Republicans broke ranks and voted with the Democrats, a lot of the rank and file Republicans are steamed at them. How does the Republican Party pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and go forward?
Well, listen, I got to tell you, I'm disappointed in my colleagues that decided to go with this snap impeachment like it's being called. The process was atrocious. Frankly, there was no process. What you had was a bunch of members in the Capitol. I mean, we're all upset about what happened on January 6th. There's no doubt about that. But this was a snap rush to judgment. There was no process. There was no ability. For members of my conference to go along with this, I thought was just wrong, flat out wrong. They should not have done it. I don't care what happened in the Capitol. It was wrong. It was a stand against our country, but you don't do something like this. You don't have these rush snap impeachment procedures. It was wrong. It should have never happened. There should have been an opportunity for the president to defend himself. He was given no such opportunity.
Congressman, so in other words, had it happened a couple of months ago where there would have been more time, then it would have been okay to have the impeachment?
If Democrats wanted to bring those articles, if they could provide evidence. And this is the key thing. They have to bring evidence. See, in our system of justice, in our system of here in the United States, there has to be an opportunity for the accused to actually bring his side of the argument, to prove to people that what he's being accused of is not true, is not accurate. If Democrats who have control in the House of Representatives want to bring articles of impeachment, that's something that they would do. They did it with the phone call, and that was baseless and ridiculous as well. So we've already seen that the Democrats are using impeachment as a political tool, as a political weapon, not something that is really about high crimes and misdemeanors. And the same thing occurred here.
Here is a montage of Democrats making impeachment about race. Listen to this.
On January 6th, Donald Trump incited his white nationalist supporters to initiate an attempted coup against the heart of our democracy.
Racism played a direct role in this incitement. The president's violent rhetoric is always at its most fevered pitch when he is talking about the civil rights and civic aspirations of Black Americans and other minority communities.
President Trump spent his presidency inflaming hate, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and violence.
We proudly speak truth to power, even in the face of a racist in chief. Root out white supremacy, starting with impeaching the white supremacist in chief.
Congressman, what's your reaction?
I thought the language was outrageous. I thought it was awful. First of all, Joe Biden is a white man. You know, for America, they need to understand this. The president-elect is a white man himself. So I don't even understand where this whole line is coming from about white supremacy and so on and so forth. The second thing is this, is that you had Black Americans and you had Hispanic Americans who voted for Donald Trump, who support Donald Trump as well. So I think that this line is something the left always does. They always try to bring race into something in order to weaponize their arguments, to make people just frankly be quiet, to shut up and to sit down. But it was wrong, flat out wrong for the members on the other side of the aisle to use that. What happened in the Capitol last week was wrong. It was a tragedy for our country. It was, in some respects, yes, an insurrection. But to use white supremacy in this language is also equally as wrong. And it's time that we as elected officials start using all of our languages, holding ourselves accountable for the words that we're using here in the United States.
Congressman, it was Facebook and Twitter in which these insurrectionists, these radicals got into that building. That's how they communicated. That's how they plotted and planned. Why is Parler paying the price?
Oh, because the left is, what they're doing right now is they're using, frankly, fascist policies to silence the right. That's exactly what's happening. Look, when the Ayatollah Khomeini can have a tweet go out calling for the genocide of Israel and Twitter doesn't flag it and take it down, that just shows you where Twitter standards are. They have no standards. Their standards are basically what they feel politically. So that's for Jack over at Twitter or anybody else. It's very, very clear that if you have dissenting political speech from the conservative side of the aisle, from the right, quote unquote, in America, you are supposed to be quiet. You are supposed to be removed from the public square. But the left can foment riots. They can do just about anything they want, and there's no repercussions.
Well, please don't be quiet. Please keep speaking out.
Absolutely. You can count on it.
All right. Congressman Byron Donalds joining us from beautiful Fort Myers in Florida. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
From Florida to a blizzard. Janice Dean is tracking a big one. It's right over her shoulder in the Midwest.
Yeah, it's developing across the Plain States and the upper Midwest. That's where we have our blizzard warnings that have just been posted. So let's get to it. We do have this system that's pushing across the northern plains. It's going to interact with a low coming out of Canada. Very powerful. And look at all of the high wind warnings in effect. Not only the potential for high wind and wintry conditions, but red flag warnings in effect for high fire danger across the Plain States. So once this gets its act together, it's going to be quite a formidable storm, bringing heavy snow, 4 to 8 inches, maybe 12 inches of snow. And then the winds. The winds are the main problem, with gusts and sustained winds of over 35 miles per hour for a duration of time. And that's why we have our blizzard warnings in effect. Travel will be impossible in some of these areas. So just pay attention to your local forecasts, and we will keep you up to date. Steve, Ainsley, Brian,
Good to know.
back to you.
Thank you so much, Janice. Still ahead, silence the